You introduced a proposal on the House floor last week that called for the immediate vote on legislation that would make it harder for the legislature to raise taxes. What is House Joint Resolution 4215 about?
Well, 4215 is about embedding the two-thirds vote requirement for tax increases into the Constitution. A few years ago, the Supreme Court threw out a two-thirds initiative saying that unless it's in the Constitution, then it's not constitutional. And that's all we'd have to do. So this measure is actually just trying to embed that two-thirds into the Constitution. And actually the vote that we took wasn't even a vote on that piece of legislation. It was a vote just to get it onto the floor calendar. Normally what we do when a bill comes in is it gets referred to a committee, goes through the committee process, we have a hearing, people come in, they give testimony on it, and then it's advanced to the floor. And then we have the opportunity to go through and do amendments. This was just taking it right to the floor. I felt that after 6 times on the ballot, having the debate out in the public, that people have already pretty well stated what their position is going to be on this. We know those who are opposed, why they're opposed. We know those who are in favor and why they're in favor. And so I didn't think it really needed to go through the committee process this time. Let's take it directly to the floor. We'd still have the opportunity for amendment, still have an opportunity to debate those amendments, and then have an opportunity to debate the measure on the floor.
Why are you working so hard to get this state constitution amendment added?
Well, it's like I mentioned, the Supreme Court has thrown out the two-thirds requirement, saying that if we're going to do it, it needs to be embedded into the Constitution. So let's go ahead and do it. The voters have said 6 times in the last 22 years that they want a two-thirds vote requirement for tax increases. And if they can't get a two-thirds vote requirement, then it needs to be sent directly to the voters for approval. That's all this does, is it embeds that into the Constitution. The reason this is so important is, 1, the Supreme Court throws it out, and 2, before the Supreme Court threw it out, it was the legislature throwing it out. And the legislature was using a simple majority vote to eliminate a two-thirds vote requirement on themselves. Seems a little unfair to me. And it goes against what the voters want. It's time to put this into the Constitution, or at least let the voters decide whether they want it in the Constitution. They've voted for this 6 times.
Can you tell me a little bit about your substitute teacher House bill and how it'll help students in schools?
Right, House Bill 1737. There are a few different options that teachers can take when they go to retire. They can wait until 65 to retire, or they can do an early retirement. Within the early retirement, there are a few different options. One is to take the full penalty, because if you retire early, remember, you're paying in to the retirement system for a shorter period of time, and you're drawing out of it for a longer period of time. So there are some costs associated with early retirement. There was one plan that we did that reduced the penalties, so they would still get a larger retirement than under a standard early retirement. But in exchange for that, they were locked out of substitute teaching until they turned 65, which would be the normal retirement age. Unfortunately, we've got a very severe shortage of substitute teachers. So this bill says, look, there's a pool of teachers over here with teaching experience that may be willing to come back into the classroom and substitute. Let's open that up and allow them to come in for a limited number of hours. What this does is it gets a trained teacher into a classroom so they can actually pick up and teach a lesson plan rather than to have somebody come in from outside who doesn't have a teaching degree or doesn't have teaching experience to just manage a classroom. It takes it from a day of seat time to a day of actual education time.